Okay, so there's been significant interest in whether or not I'm going to do a pumpkin this year. So I decided to give it a shot, but this year I'm going to show some people how it's done. Have a look at this. I'll show you a couple of pictures along the way and show you what it turns out like in the end, but I want to show you my process. I have about a 10-15 pound pumpkin there, and I drew on the face what I wanted the pumpkin basic outline to be. I want a 3D lip. Down here, I want his nose to be bulbous like a drunkard. I want a broken tooth and a full tooth. And I want in-depth eyeballs, right, with an eyelid. So what I do is I draw it all out on the pumpkin, get my basic, see if I can get back far enough, get my basic overall design. And then I think about what are the parts that are going to protrude the furthest out the edge of the pumpkin. I need what levels can I work with here. So obviously the nose is going to poke out pretty far, and the lip's going to poke out pretty far because it's going to be 3D. So I numbered those with 1. And the next level down from the nose logically will be 2. But what else on the pumpkin might actually come out to this level? If you think about your head, this part of your head right here sticks out about as far as the edge of this nostril. And we've got our eyelid parts that are a little bit deeper than the nostrils right here, but the eyelid is basically on level with what you imagine for the pupil, right? So then I work my way through and I draw out the different levels. So when I start cutting, I start with the highest level I've got. But how do I know how deep to go? Well, that's the next part. You flip the sucker around because you need to gut it anyway to make it easier to work with. I'm going to cut a hole right here, and I'm going to measure the depth, and then I can use a little trick called division that I learned in school to figure out what depth to cut. And I'll start with my deepest cut first. I'll take a few pictures along the way, and I'll show you the final product. So what do I use for this work? I use a couple of things. I use a large butcher's knife, a smaller butcher's knife, a nice smooth edge carving knife. Probably one of the nicest blades I'm going to use is right here because it's nice and thin, easy to work with. These, you notice, are quite a bit thicker on the edge, so it's hard to get through the pumpkin in a concise cut. This is for removing large chunks of data. It's a nice saw, and I use a couple of paring knives. This one's nice and thick. This one has a much thinner stance, so if you look at those side by side, you'll see the difference. Makes a big difference on the cut. And finally, my precision tool is my fillet knife. Nice and thin profile, really strong, thin blade. That's what actually makes the eyeballs. And sometimes I'll use a razor blade. You have a pack of these puppies handy. It's basically just straight edge. That's all they are. And when you use them, you want to make sure you hold them like this, so wrapped in the paper. That allows you to manipulate them with one hand without cutting the out of yourself, because it's sharp on the other side too. And when you're ready to use the other side, you've dulled this out, then you simply close it up, flip it over, and expose the new side. Don't cut the out of yourself, okay? Okay, so next, you cut your hole in the back that you're going to use to gut it, and then you clean it as though you scraped it with a spoon. And you need to measure your deepest distance where you're not going to collapse the wall. So what I like to do is I take my knife and I mark it with tape at a point where I think it would collapse the wall. So if I go any deeper than that from the outside, it's going to get into this mushy stuff and it's going to break my wall. So I got to make sure when I cut out my 4s, which was my deepest measurement, I don't go past that tape. This is how I do it. Maybe there's a less dangerous method, but yeah, the 4s take precision. I like this. So now that we have a hole cut in the back, we know our measurements, we're ready to start cutting. You notice there's a lot of moisture down inside the pumpkin. We need to keep it cool, but when I put these ice packs in, they're going to condense. There's going to be a lot of moisture in those. So I'm going to stuff this thing so it'll stay cool longer, but before I do it, I'm going to put some paper towels in on the bottom. Then I'll put the ice packs all over the top of that, and then more paper towels on top. And what that should do is absorb most of the condensation coming off of these very cold ice packs and the pumpkin should act like a cooler you would take to a ball game, and hold the coldness inside and keep that pumpkin from breaking down and getting soft on me so fast while I'm cutting. This is about a 3.5, 4 hour carving process, so we have to keep it cool. Okay, so the first deepest cut, I take the knife and I shove it straight in at the angle that I want the cut to be down to the tape, and I lever it. Usually I have my finger braced on that tape, but I just work it across slowly so that I'm not putting force behind it as I cut. Now what you'll notice is there's a line here where I cut where it was drawn. As you're cutting these angles, you're probably going to cut out your marker lines, and at that point you really have to just start carving that section. So as soon as you make your first couple of deep cuts, you're going to have to start whittling slowly away at the whole thing. So we're going to take out these deep sections, and we're going to take out these empty holes that are in the corner of the mouths. Those are going to be our starting points, and we'll just work our way out from there. Now the advantage of starting with the deepest cuts is you don't end up cutting tender work that you might have been working on by accidentally bumping it later on. So there's the deep cut on the other side, and you can see the holes here in the corners of the mouths that I cut. And I did those with this potato peeler. So we can see here I've carved out one side of the face. I've got the tooth, the beginning of the nose, and the eyeball started. Just going to have to keep whittling slowly away at this. Now I worked my way across and got a little bit of depth work done. And what I wanted to show you is that you start adding in detail as you go. Start paying attention to depth and working on the 3D aspects as you go through this. So I hollowed out the mouth, and as you can see I also have the nose hollowed out, so when you look at it from below it looks like it has depth.